All right, so I just started recording. So DEF CON has put out the call for papers. Now, my first thought was, who are they fooling? They're going to have to cancel it. But then I realized, I guess that's not true, because I looked at China. China had the coronavirus started in January. It was a huge peak. Now it is March, and it's already dwindling. So if it is like that here, then I guess it'll stop by maybe June. It'll go down to a small number of cases. And by then, I guess we won't be closing everything and freaking out and not taking airplanes and everything. I guess we'll be back to more or less normal life by then. So I guess they can have DEF CON. However, I would think DEF CON will probably be underpopulated because a lot of people will not be able to travel there, or they won't want to go to a gathering. And therefore, I think it'll be a good time to submit papers. My impression is many people will not submit papers to DEF CON because they will not want to make the trip, and so I think there will be less competition to get your paper approved. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. If you want to give a talk at DEF CON, this is probably a window of opportunity to get a talk in that might otherwise be rejected. I think they're going to have to take a lot more papers, a lot higher percentage of papers, but I'm just guessing, but that's my impression. Black Hat is scheduled at the same time, and it's supposedly going, and I'm approved to teach a bunch of trainings, all 4 days of Black Hat. The Black Hat is more expensive, and it is probably less value for students, in my opinion, because the good stuff is the hands-on training, and those are really expensive, like $3,000 per student per class. And that's SANS training. And unless you can get somebody else to pay for that, that is probably out of reach. And what people tell me is the actual talks at the conference are pretty much all vendor pitches and stuff. I've never been to them. If you want to go to talks, the best deal is always B-Sides. B-Sides Vegas is free or extremely cheap, and it's very good talks, and it's not crowded. DEF CON, you can't even go to the talks. There'll be a line an hour long, and it'll be packed. You won't even get in typically, although maybe not this year. But the reason you go to DEF CON is the villages. And they will have a voting machine village. They will have, last year they had a fighter airplane to hack. This year they're going to have a satellite to hack. They have a car hacking village. They have a biohacking village. They have a cryptography village. So that is the cool thing. In my opinion, going to the huge packed talks is not worth it. Just watch the videos later. But what's worth it is going to the little villages where they have smaller groups where you can meet people. And another thing that's awesome to do, by the way, is volunteer to help. If you can do that, then you make friends and stuff. Yeah.
Besides Las Vegas, I checked, it's a minimum of 12 hours to volunteer.
Yeah, volunteering for B-Sides Vegas would be good too. That's why, I think they're all going to happen, although there's been it looks like they're still planning for them. And of course, it all depends on coronavirus. But my impression is that in a month or two, this coronavirus thing will stop, meaning everything is canceled. We'll be back to some semblance of normal life. And then, so I guess my current planning is these things are going to happen. So I'm going to submit some papers to DEF CON. And so, yeah. Sure, they publish all the videos.
Where would you find them?
I'm not sure. I think they have a list here for the old ones, and a lot of them leak on YouTube. For a while, they were selling them. Now I think they officially publish them right away. They keep changing. I'm not quite sure where it is now. But I think if you just Google DEF CON videos on YouTube, you'll find a lot of them. If you go to the con, if you go to an official hotel, there's usually streaming to your room. And it used to be that there was like several months after the con before the official videos came out, and they charged money for them. But anything interesting, somebody in a foreign country would put it on YouTube immediately, like Russia or something. So the hot ones find their way to video right away. All right, anyway, but I'm sure we'll have a lot more about it. A lot more will come out next month or two. But all the cons in the next month or two are pretty much all canceled, like South by Southwest and Wild West Hacking Fest. All the conventions of every kind for the next month or two are closed because everybody's freaking out right now about the coronavirus. And just to make sure this gets on the tape, I should explain what's going on with this class. The college is officially closing this Friday, and there'll be no more face-to-face meetings for any class for the rest of the semester. And every class will supposedly move to online, everyone that can possibly, and they'll finish effectively online. Obviously, I can transfer it to online. We could have been doing this online all along. Most people are, in fact, connecting remotely. So I'll just continue the same way I've been doing. I am adjusting the schedule, of course. So the schedule for this class, I moved a couple things around because spring break moved from the first week of April to the last week of May. So I put the holiday there. And I will have a meeting next week online like this. I'll just tune in by Zoom. And I can help people by Zoom and hands-on projects too. You can share your desktop so I can see what you're doing. So you can even get help with hands-on projects over Zoom. And So we will just continue the same way we did when I was sick. As far as I'm concerned, for the rest of the semester, this is the schedule. And let me know if anybody has any special concerns or anything. I'll continue to put it on YouTube so people can watch it later and all that jazz. We have the online quizzes. The homework all comes in by email. So, you know, we really don't need the physical college, except for the students using the lab machines. And I'm sure there could be no official availability to labs anymore after Friday. So be aware of that. I think after Friday, officially, no class instruction physically on campus at all. But I'm hoping I can still get in the building to do office work and such. Anyway, any questions about anything? I'm sure the official answer has got to be this Friday, no more labs for the rest of the semester. You can join the Zoom and you can talk to me, and after class, I'll stop projecting and you can project yours to me and then I can see your desktop. So I should be able to help you that way. Yeah.
So if we just like join the Zoom, like not just for this class, but for any of your other classes, then we essentially get your office hours?
Yeah, that's right. I'll just have office hours at the end of every class. Okay. I've always been doing that all along. After I run the lecture, I leave the Zoom going for a while. I'm not recording it anymore. And then students can ask questions and you could also share your desktop. And that would be a good way to do it. Or you could send in screenshots, but that would take a while through the email. The best thing is catch me in class and let me know you want me to look at your Zoom. And I can also schedule other times perhaps, although my schedule is currently getting very full, but it's random. I've got consulting jobs that come and go. But right now they're all hitting pretty hot and heavy. So good. These are good questions. So let me talk about today's topic, which is not, and then I will have a new project to show you, which is related to this for once. So this is 8B. All right. So we're in the second part of Android implementation issues. So we've been through this stuff, and today we're going to do practical physical attacks and Polaris memory corruption, including Metasploit attacks, which is what I have a project on. And next week we'll have some more stuff about JavaScript interfaces. So the first question, if you steal a phone, is how do you get past the lock screen? It's probably locked. So how do you get in? Now, the whole point of the lock screen is you're supposed to have a PIN and nobody's supposed to get in without the PIN. But on both Android and iPhone, there is just an endless number of ways to get in. A lot of them involve using the things that still work, like the emergency call feature and such. There are many, many people that find all you have to do is make a call, hit a button, tap here, and you eventually get to an unlocked screen. That happens a lot on iPhones and Androids. So here's a few ways. If you ADB USB debugging is turned on, which it would not normally be by default, but it could be if the person's been hacking their phone, then you can connect with USB debugging, but even that should not be possible if the screen is locked. That would be too easy. So supposedly you cannot connect with USB when the screen is locked, but there's been a bug. In early versions of Android, you could navigate to the emergency dialer or lock screen, and that would enable the USB debugging, because you're no longer exactly on the lock screen. So if USB debugging was turned on, you could gain control of the phone that way. Then there's privilege levels, and those are run here. Now, normally ADB runs like an app with low privileges. So if you do get an ADB shell, you don't have complete control of the phone, but you can configure your phone to run ADB as root, which is the way JennyMotion is. And you just go to a configuration file. Here it is, default.prop is a configuration file, and you just set this value. ro.secure. If that equals 0, then ADB runs as root. This is true of everything in Linux. There's just configuration files and you can adjust everything, and that's where you adjust the ADB privilege level. So ADB can't run as root unless it's compiled with a special flag now, so that even if you make this change, ADB will still not run as root. So this is why hacked boot ROM loaders and things like JennyMotion that are not exactly straight native Android have a modified ADB which can run as root, which is why we can do a lot of our projects so easily here. Normal phones make it difficult to run ADB as root because obviously that's extremely dangerous. So you have to recompile it from source with a flag to make your own custom version. You can't use the one they give you. All right, and so another thing you can do is an unlock bootloader. You can, if your phone has like an emergency soft firmware recovery mode, like almost every IoT device, you can boot it into fast boot mode, then holding on these keys, and then you'll be in a special recovery mode. And now it's boots from recovery partition. This is true of almost every device, routers, phones, everything has this. In case the operating system gets corrupt, there is some way to boot to a minimal operating system so you can reload the firmware. And this is how you put custom firmware on your device. This is how we do it with the iPhones, the iPhone jailbreak. It's how they all work. So if you do unlock the bootloader and boot from the other thing, then it forces a factory reset and wipes out all your data, which is an interesting procedure. What Apple does, as you know, we talked about in the iPhone project, is your user data is preserved when you jailbreak your phone, but it's still hidden behind your password. And even the jailbroken phone does not let you add the user data. That would be nicer. But what Android does is force you to erase the data in order to unlock the bootloader and boot a custom ROM. Yeah.
What happens to the bootloader after you kind of you load something else in there?
Yeah, and the main point, people have been doing this for a long time, is if you want a custom Android, different than the Android that came from the manufacturer. And this used to be very popular, a bunch of Android mods that you would put on your phone to get more features.
So you modify the firmware.
Yes.
So if you want to go back?
If you want to go back, you've lost all your user data, so you'd have to back that up first. If you actually want to get your images and emails and stuff, you'd have to put them back on.
But after you modify the firmware, what do you unmodify the firmware?
Well, I know with tethered jailbreaks, you just reboot the phone and it goes back to normal. There are untethered jailbreaks where you would have to do something to restore the old firmware back.
What's the
Tethered, that's what I mean. A tethered jailbreak is what we have with the iPhone jailbreak. You have to be connected to the computer with the USB when you reboot every time. So if you want to get away from the jailbreak, you just unplug it and reboot it, and then it goes back to the native code. That's a tethered jailbreak. There are untethered jailbreaks, which are more popular, where you modify the phone, and now you can use it and restart it and everything, and it always runs the modified bootloader. And now, to get back to the clean state, I think you pretty much have to restore it from backup, but I haven't done it. That's what I did. But I didn't try to jailbreak on an iPhone about 8 years ago when you could, and then I restored it with an iTunes backup to get back to the native code.
What happened to the input phone?
Well, I think that would work. You could just restore it from backup to get it back, but I don't really know. It's a good question. I haven't done it. It might also be that some of the jailbreaks give you a boot up option to choose. I'm not sure. And there may be other choices too. So anyway, ClockworkMod Recovery ROM was one of the popular ones. This was real popular. You could boot into this and get a root ADB shell, and then you get to modify it. This was the most popular one I heard a lot about maybe 6 years ago. They haven't been popular lately because I think Android improved to where there wasn't much motivation to have a custom altered version of Android. Old versions of Android were pretty lame, and the hacked custom ROM had cool features like backgrounds and colors and stuff that people wanted.
Some Android phone has allow you to boot as part of the
Yeah, I guess, okay, those would be what I'd call developer phones or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Of course, you might not be able to manipulate the system though, because that's different. Anyway, so if you want to bypass the lock screen, if you can have an app with the disable keyboard permission, then that means the app has the ability to unlock the phone. So then if you could get them to install malware that has that permission, then your app would be able to unlock the phone, which would be pretty awesome. So you can make this. I did it with Drozer. Drozer, you can make custom malware. So you make Drozer with disable keyboard permission, and then it'll be able to bypass the screen lock. But it only works on relatively older versions of Android when I tried it. It worked on Android 5, but not on Android 9. So I think there are more permissions. Google increases Android security with every version. And by the way, another thing I heard this morning on the Security Now podcast, which I did not know, is that even Google phones only get updates for 3 years, and they don't tell you that. Other Android phones get very few updates and typically no updates after 2 years, and they block a lot of updates anyway, and they even lie and tell you they put on updates they haven't put on. So it is much worse than I thought. And like we were talking about today, the people on Security Now podcast are saying, I think I'm going to tell my friends and family to quit using Android phones entirely because this is worse than I thought. I thought if you got the official Google phone like the Nexus, that at least it got updated, but even that is not true. Because 3 years, unless you actually get a new phone every 2 years, which is what I guess they want you to do, your Android phone is just years out of date, and that is insane. I don't know who they're fooling with that. it's appalling not to have your stuff updated, and there's no option to update it. You can't do a thing. That's why that'd be a reason to switch to a custom ROM. That's another reason a lot of people did it. If you switch to a custom ROM, then you control the updates, like ClockworkMod. Then you don't have to go through some stupid carrier like Samsung or something and have their permission to put on updates. And that's why a lot of people said it makes me more secure to run my custom ROM, because now you can control the updates. Anyway, that's a thing to know. Another thing you can do, by the way, to unlock the phone is you can take away the lock data. Remember, the passwords are stored in a hash. Well, the PIN is stored in a hash. If it's a gesture PIN, it's in this file. If it's a PIN or password, it's in that file. If you can delete that file, then it will never lock. There is no lock file. So that's an option. If you can get the permission to delete that file, it gets the lock off of there. All right, but of course, you have to be system or root to do that. So it kind of means you've already defeated the lock once to get there. So it's not entirely useful. But this is a way, if you get a phone that's still on, and it's somebody else has set the PIN, if you can get root while it's on, you could delete these files, and then the PIN will never come back. Well, that is a very good question. If it was an iPhone, you would never get to the user data anymore because it's encrypted with that PIN. On Android, they're typically not encrypted at all, except the latest version. And even then, I don't think the encryption has as many layers of complex keys as iPhone, but I'm not really sure. It's a very good question. Anyway, then you can abuse application issues. There's an intent that unlocks the phone on early versions of Android. You just choose lock generic and send it this, and it automatically unlocks the phone. So if you can send that intent, you can unlock the phone. And that was a big deal here. You think your phone was locked? Think again, all this means is all you have to do is have a malicious app on the phone. It can send an intent and unlock the phone. So, and of course, Android phones are often have malware. The App Store was all full of malware. It is pretty easy in practice to trick people into putting malware on their Android phone because they typically don't run any antivirus, and none of the stores are clean. So, that's the point. If you have a rogue app, they can unlock the phone at any time. Of course, that's only for very old versions of Android from 2013. So not too many people are still using those. And if they are, of course, I hope they don't have any illusion that there's any security. All right, so then there's logic flaws. Like I mentioned before, you can still do things with a locked phone, like make emergency phone calls and receive phone calls. And so those means certain apps can open up activities other than the lock screen, and therefore you have a pretty good chance of finding some way to make it back to a working one. So Motorola Droid, all you had to do is send a phone call, answer the call, and press the back button, and you get to the desktop. So you don't need to unlock the phone. All you need to do is make a phone call to it, and you can get in. And this is true of a lot of iPhone versions too, that you can do a trick like this. Yeah.
How old does the phone have to be?
What's that?
How old does the phone have to be considered too old?
Well, I think as soon as you're not getting security updates, it's too old. And that would mean for non-Google phones, all phones of any age, because they typically block security updates even when they let some updates through. And for Google phones, I guess it's 3 years, which is pretty gruesome because phones are pretty expensive. That's why I think I tend to agree with the Steve Gibson gang that I wouldn't recommend getting Android phone until they fix this problem. And Google has been talking for at least 4 years about having a security update channel that will get to every phone that won't be blocked, but they still haven't worked that out. And I think until they work that out, the product is not really ready for use. I think that's pretty outrageous. To have no way to deliver security updates, that's pretty poor practice. Yeah, I'd like to message all of Liz's friends on her phone when it's locked using Siri. Yeah, you do. You do that already. Well, I don't know. If anybody would do it, it would be you. Caitlin, well, I remember I went out to dinner and Liz was showing people things on her phone. She passed around this video and then it went around an extra time and Caitlin was there, tap, tap. And she said, Caitlin, what are you doing at my phone? Just like last week, Caitlin stuck up to my computer. I came back, what are you doing at my computer? She's stealing all my passwords. What do you think she's doing at my computer? So I think she probably could. Anyway, so, all right. And so Viber had this one, there's a calling app, so you could make this call and again, press the back button and get back to the desktop. Since the app has the ability to unlock the phone to some extent, there's a way to trick it sometimes into giving you the unlocked phone. So, all right, So if you have, here's another one. If you forget your lock code on your Android phone, now, as far as I know, if you forget your lock code on an iPhone, you might as well throw it in the trash, because that's the whole point. The FBI can't get in, nobody can get in. But there must be something you can do, but I'm not sure what it is, because at that point it's basically like a stolen phone. But I think you might be able to get in with your iCloud password, however, if you locked in iCloud. But the same thing's true of Google. So if you put in the PIN too many wrong times, then you get, it doesn't just lock the phone or erase the data, which is what iPhones do. It sends you to a place and says log into your Google account. So if you forgot your PIN, but you can still get in your Google account, you can still get in your phone, which is certainly a convenience for customer service, but it means that if I hack your Gmail account, I can get in your phone. Which is, of course, and the other thing, there's also a thing you can turn on, Android Device Manager, which lets you control your device from the cloud. And if you use Microsoft products, you'll see they're always trying to get you to tie this to the Microsoft cloud so that your login, all your devices are connected, because this is what most people want. They want their phone and their tablet and their watch and their desktop all connected to share emails and alerts and everything, and all tied in through the cloud. That's the way Apple started it, and everybody's found out this is what most customers want. All right, and then there's remote attacks. So this is when you launch something over the internet. So you can put in a jar that has an agent. You can put a rogue agent with install packages. So once you have a malware on your phone that can install more packages, it can install more packages after it. And this is how most malware works. You have a little loader, then it downloads more stuff and puts more malware on, same way it works on Windows. So the most technical way to do it, of course, is what we're doing in the exploit development class, where you actually have binary code in memory, buffer overflows or heap overflows, that sort of thing. That is the standard exploit development process, which is the most difficult. And this means somebody must have made an error at the binary level, and mostly that code is written by Google, and they patch it. So it is getting harder and harder as modern versions of Android patch these things. All right, but rather than exploiting the apps that Google wrote, which are probably very secure, you're much more likely to succeed by getting the apps written by the distributors of the phones, who just throw junk together. And so Polaris Viewer is their PDF viewer that some brand of phone put on here. And of course, like most of these apps you've never heard of that are installed by default on a device, they tend to be poorly written. And this one had a simple stack-based overflow and install packages. So you could exploit it and then put on more packages through it. So that was good, clean fun. But that's 2012. That's a while back. And so it was a Samsung Galaxy S3, and it would just visit an exploit page in Polaris Viewer, and then it'll just download a file. And if you open that file, then the phone is owned, and you can now install any other malware you want to put on the phone. And then, of course, we talked about this before. The JavaScript interface means that JavaScript on a web page can run Java methods within your app. And there was a code execution file that would get you to the underlying system here in old versions of Android, so you could execute system commands from JavaScript on a page, which is a pretty big hole. By the way, last week, Vincent Taviso found that this was true of a popular antivirus product, that it ran, I think it might have been Avast, it ran a system, it ran something as system, which then took commands from JavaScript. And he didn't even write an exploit. He just published this, and within 2 or 3 days, they passed it, saying, oh, okay, that does look bad. So anyway, so you can do it with Metasploit, and we're going to do this in the project. I'll show it to you. You can make Metasploit malware and take over the phone. So I'll just go to mine. I won't worry about that much. The Exynos driver was another driver that had a memory map module. And this will try to abuse the map device operation. So this is it sounds kind of like Dirty Cow. Something about the map device function has a vulnerability, but this tends to cause a kernel panic and crash the device. So the same thing is true of one of the Dirty Cow exploits. There's one that's safe and one that kills the machine. I know this because our team used it at CCDC. You know, at the CCDC in Rochester, or CPTC, and they were trying to exploit a server, and they told them, whatever you do, don't crash that server. And the student used the wrong Dirty Cow exploit and crashed the server. They had to go apologize to organizers and stuff. That's hard. The same thing, by the way, is true of the blue EternalRomance and Eternal Blue. EternalRomance is safe, the NSA exploits. Eternal Blue is dangerous as hell. It kills the device half the time. That's why I was pretty annoyed when everybody, that one's very painful to use. EternalRomance doesn't crash it. Anyway, they're all from 2017. And if your device has been patched in the last 3 years, your Windows device is no longer vulnerable to them. All right, so once you have managed to install some kind of malware on the phone, to maintain access, you probably want to put a SugarUser app on the phone. The normal SugarUser app will pop up a box asking the user, is it okay to escalate? And that's not what you want if you're a bad guy, so you put on another SU, minimal SU, that will escalate to root without asking the user, which is of course not something that normal things a user would put on the phone would be on there, but that's what you want to have fun with malware. And all right, so man-in-the-middle exploits, another way, of course, you can get in the middle by arc poisoning a wireless network or using burp or anything. And once you're in the middle, you can then modify code if you are not using HTTPS, which a lot of apps don't, but most of them are now using HTTPS. So then you would have to either find an app that doesn't verify HTTPS certificates, and there are some of those, but they're certainly not the majority, or you can go get a real HTTPS certificate if you're actually able to, which means you have to be rich or a nation state to bribe a certificate authority or hack one and steal them. And that does happen, but it's not something that normal low-level attackers can do. All right, and so I got some cahoots about that stuff. And hope I've been recording this. I'm not sure I remember turning this on. Good, it is recording. That's a good sign. And I see a chat message. So let me go here. Oh, sorry, fine, okay. Let's see this chat message and then we'll start the cahoots. The chat messages are here. Is AWS far superior to Azure security-wise? That is a very interesting question, and I do not know the answer. Basically, if you want Windows servers, Azure is the choice. They totally support domain controllers and everything. And AWS is certainly older, and it's all Linux. So I would like to say AWS would be more secure, but in practice, AWS has these ridiculous open buckets, which have been leaking all the data for years. So I think AWS has most of the market, and they've had fantastic security flaws. And but it's more complicated than that because AWS does not regard that as their problem. As far as AWS is concerned, they met their contract, and it's not their problem that you chose to put data and then not protect it. So you can argue, but in practice, when an average system administrator takes your servers and puts them on AWS, they usually create a god-awful security disaster. You have to be very careful moving to the cloud. And the cloud providers do not take responsibility for your security. So just clicking next, 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 and doing the default thing does not mean you're securely in the cloud, often quite the opposite. So I don't think it's as simple as either way. I don't think there's a simple answer to that question. Just like there's not a simple answer to the question, is Linux more secure than Windows? The fact is they both have problems, and you have to know what you're doing. If they're set up by a good administrator, they can both be secure. If they're set up sloppily, they can both be very dangerous. It's not as simple as one being good and the other being bad. It used to be 15 years ago that Linux was good and Windows was bad, but Windows cleaned up their act and the flaws in Linux became more clear to where it's not a clear winner anymore. What's that? Tools? Many more tools in Amazon. Amazon is much more mature. They have a lot of IDS solutions and encryption solutions and VLANs. They have many, many security tools, far more than I think Azure. It's a far more mature infrastructure. The point of Azure is if you want Windows servers, obviously. They're really ready to play ball with the Microsoft stuff. But Azure has been around for much longer. And I just read an article today that a major judge said he thinks Amazon is going to win the lawsuit and get the DoD contract. That will change the whole cloud marketplace. The $10 billion or $10 trillion DoD contract, if it goes to Azure, they would be number one. If it goes to Amazon, they would pull way ahead. And no one knows how it's going to go. It depends on this lawsuit. Anyway, so I got 128. Wait, I got my favorites. And 128. 8B. I think this is the right Kahoot. These are good questions. Classic is what I want. And I can get better music. Or at least different music. I have someplace to put the answers? Um, 311. Oh, good. Aha. Caitlin's come out of the closet. I got 10 online and about 4 in the room, so might be a few more coming. I'll give it a few more seconds. All right. So, which system allows a website to unlock your phone? Hey, Android Device Manager. If you turn it on, then you can unlock your phone from the web, which is, of course, a convenience for most users. All right. So what's the permission that allows an app to unlock the phone? Okay, that's disable key guard. All right. There we go. And what's the most technical type of attack? Okay, memory corruption. All right. And which action will delete all the user's data? Yeah, unlocking the bootloader does that. All right, so we've got winners, Pit. That might be a real name, I don't know. If not, they're gonna have to tell me. CKG, I don't know about these names. If you want to get your points, you might want to give me a more thorough name, like that one. I don't know if that's Caitlin or what. There's another one claiming to be Caitlin, but there could be imposters. So if you guys want your points, you're gonna have to come out of the closet. And anyway, I want to show you this new project, which I noticed last time I didn't have the Metasploit project, and I'll explain why. But now I have it back, sort of. So here is the project, and I added it here as 410. And I made it extra credit. I'm probably going to make all the new ones I add from now on extra credit. I'm not quite sure about that. But anyway, I made this one extra credit. Now, originally, in previous semesters, we put a Trojan in real big apps like WhatsApp and Whole Foods and Lyft. But what's going on here is there's this tool which is necessary for what we do here called APK tool. We've been using it, and it's what's built into Metasploit is APK tool. And the problem is apps keep changing. And APK tool updates about every 6 months. So if APK tool has just updated, it can unpack and repack most apps. And a month later, it can only unpack and repack about half the apps. And right now, it's about 5-6 months since it has updated, so it doesn't work on any of the apps I tested. What happens is it falls behind. So there's a more fun way to use Metasploit, where you take a real app and you add malware to it. So it still runs and it has malware in it, which is awesome, but it doesn't work on any of the apps I tested. It will work if you care. If you wait until APK tool updates and try it the next week, it'll work on a lot of the apps, because they keep on changing it. So here we're going to do a much weaker and less fun attack, where you just make a malicious app with Metasploit without basing it on a real app. The cool thing is when you base it on a real app and then it has the right look and feel and it actually runs like the real app plus malware. This is just a malicious app. So you connect to your device with ADB Connect like we've done before, and you need some software. And if you do any other projects, you've got it. But if you don't, you need APK tool, you need OpenJDK, you need zip-align and Android tools. That's what you need. And in fact, I should have put this after that because you might not have ADB to connect. But anyway, this gives you all the tools you need. The reason you need OpenJDK is to get jar signer in case you don't have it. Now you create a malicious app. You can just use MSF Venom, which is included by default on Kali. And if you look at the Android payloads, there's really only a few. And so the normal one you use is Interpreter Reverse TCP. That is the generic Android payload for use it for Windows or anything else too, that will phone home to the command and control server and then give you a Meterpreter shell that gives you a nice list of commands that are useful for exploitation. So you find your local address. You have to put the command and control center's address in the malware, which is a general case with all malware. That's why if you analyze malware, you can pretty easily find where the command and control center is. And then you run this MSF Venom with that exploit, set the L host equal to your command and control center address, which is your Kali machine, output in raw, and your output is happyfunball.apk. It will create an APK with this name. And it does. Now you have to sign it. So you have to have a key code signing certificate. If you haven't already made one, you just do the same thing we always have with key tool to make the certificate. And then you sign the app with jar signer, just like we've done before. And now you have a malicious app. Now this app is really pretty lame. It doesn't even show up in a list of apps. It doesn't have any visible screens or anything, so it's pretty lame, but it'll do the job. So now to install the malware, you use, when I tried to install it, it wouldn't install it because of, I think, Play Protect, which won't solve, something about this app is so fishy, the modern version of Android won't take it. So I checked, and here's the command to turn off the app verifier. So you do that first, and then it will install Happy Funball. Otherwise, it complains about this app saying, this app doesn't look very good. All right, and so then you start a command and control server. This is the standard Metasploit stuff, just multi-handler with your payload. This will listen on a local port, on the default port of 4444, waiting for victims to phone home. So now you just have to open a second command shell, connect to your app, and then this is the command. You have to do ADB, right? You already installed it up here. You installed the app. I thought I would launch it on the phone, but you can't even find it to launch it on the phone. It is such a lame app. You have to launch it this way. Here's how you automatically launch an app on the phone. I Googled for it. There's a command called monkey. Don't ask me. ADB has a command called, the Android shell has a command called monkey, which will execute the launcher for an app. So that's how you launch an app from ADB. And when you do it, it opens a Meterpreter shell. And now you can execute the usual Meterpreter commands. Sysinfo will tell you about the operating system, which version of Android it is. And then there's other ones you could play with. This is the one to get a flag to turn in. You can download the local storage, camera, stuff off the phone. You can get screenshots to see what they're doing, usual stuff. You know, I think you can probably turn on the microphone if you have a real microphone. You know, all the goodies you could do with Metasploit shells, you can do to your Android phone. And you trick someone into installing malware. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that. It's not incredibly useful in this form, but it shows the basic vulnerability. And what's more fun is when you actually put it in a real app, where you run the real app, it opens up real screens, you can really use it, and then it's giving you the bad guy shell. That's more fun. But that is harder to do. I'm only able to do it at brief periods every year, right after the update APK tool. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. And aha, a name has appeared. Perhaps more than one. Ook. Oh, that's monkey. It must be Caitlin. Okay. I'm interpreting it that way. And this, I know, I think that was a fake one. I didn't figure she would ever use her real name. So Pit is Tip. I kind of wondered if that would be Tip. Okay, Tip. Okay, and CKG, that might be some real, that's you? Good. Carolyn? Kim, okay, Kim. Good, I'll see equal Kim. Right, good, all right. So I have names, all right, so I'm gonna stop the recording and I'll leave the share going for a little bit of time. And this